Okay, so I am not very technologically adept, so I'm giving this a try and we'll see how it goes. I am starting this series of recordings called The Inconvenient Housewife, and I'm calling it that because one, I'm a housewife. I am not inconvenient to my husband, but I think society would tell us that housewives are kind of inconvenient. I think there is this narrative out there that says we should be outside the home being career women as well as being super mom and all of that. And although I don't think that that's a bad thing, I think wherever God puts you and whatever you and your spouse decide is the best for your family, that is what you're supposed to be doing as long as you're being obedient to God. But I think a lot of times we overlook in the Bible that most of the women there were housewives. And we do tend to glorify the Deborahs, the Esthers, those that had another role. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think sometimes the wives and the moms get kind of a bad rap in the Bible. And I just kind of want to take a deep dive into the wives and moms and housewives of the Bible because I think sometimes we diminish a little bit their role or the things that were going on. And this past year, especially, God has really been working with me on that. When you move twice in 2 years, so you have three homes in 3 years, and your kids are juggling three schools in 3 years, you tend to get isolated and not on purpose. But I think God used that time to kind of open my eyes to some roles. And I've heard from a few women, quite a few women, as I've crossed their paths, that there is this anguish and this guilt if they are staying at home. And I've heard it here a lot. I am in another country, and a lot of times when you are an expatriate in another country, there are very strict rules and laws about what you can and can't do while you're there. And I'm here following my husband and being a dependent. I am not allowed to work here unless I fulfill certain things, and the that is the predicament of a lot of women here. And even in my Bible study, I hear, well, I've always worked, I've always done this, I've always done that, but I can't here, and I'm at a loss. I don't know what to do. And I just think that every season God has you in is completely on purpose. And another reason I'm also starting this is not just because God's had me doing a deep dive that way, but for a very long time I've taught women's Bible studies, just very small groups. But every time I have, in those small groups, you form very deep relationships. And I am of a group, a subset of society that moves a lot, and therefore I encounter a lot of different people who also move a lot. And some of those people have reached out to me in the past 2 years and just said, I miss our Bible studies. I miss the depth that we had. I miss those conversations. And a lot of people have moved away to another place where they don't have the opportunity to have that. So that is kind of my initial group that I am sending this out to. However, whenever you send something out on the internet, you never know who's going to come across it. So, to recap, I'm sending this out for that group of ladies that misses this kind of in-depth time. I know this doesn't give the opportunity for you to respond to me in probably the ways in the past, but you can comment, you can email me, and we can keep some dialogue going that way. But I think it's time to do just kind of a deep dive. And so we'll start with the very first one, Eve. And so I think if you've studied the Bible at all, you're pretty familiar with Genesis and that creation story. And I really wanted to look at Eve kind of in chapters 2 through 4. Now you might be going, but Ellen, she's very, very limited in how we see Eve in Genesis chapter 2. And in fact, that is correct, because chapter 2 is where God creates and names Adam, and he has him doing jobs in the garden. And the first thing he has him doing is naming animals. And, bringing them, naming them, bringing them, naming them. And he's like, okay, you got to take care of the garden and you're going to name these animals. And then God's going, it's not good for man to be alone. And so we look in chapter 2 at verse 20. The man gave names to all the livestock, to the birds of the sky, and to every wild animal. But for the man, no helper was found corresponding to him. Okay, well, Adam's got God, so why does he need a helper? I mean, he's got this incredible fellowship with God, but it says no helper was found corresponding to him. And I'm guessing maybe he's seeing males and females of the various animals, but not seeing one of his own kind. But I think this is more of God saying, hey, I think this guy needs a helper. And why? Why would he need a helper? He's doing exactly what God laid out for him. And but then God puts him in a sleep, takes one of his ribs, and made this rib into woman and brought her to the man. So first of all, God brought her. This is not, oh, look, that guy is just, here's Eve, and ooh, isn't Adam like good looking and da-da-da, and how can I orchestrate this so that I get an introduction? Or, now listen, somebody who is set up with their husband on a blind date, like, yes, the machinations of man can work to bring your helpmate. But the most important thing is God is doing that. So the man says, this one at last is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. This one will be called woman, for she was taken from man. Okay, so Adam calls her woman. Let's be very clear on this. She is woman at this point. She has not been named Eve. I missed this for years. It's like, okay, well, God named Adam. He puts him in a deep sleep. There's Eve. And I'm thinking at this point that she's already Eve. She is not. She is woman, okay? Now, the reason I am bringing up this point is because woman, from man, okay? So Adam essentially is calling her from me, okay? Woman, from me. So this is absolutely 100% correct. She is made from him, from me. But he is not calling her Eve. He's calling her woman. He has named her just like he has named every other kind and species of animal in the garden, the livestock, the birds, everything. He has named it. He is also naming her woman. Okay, this is not a proper name. This is a type name, just like it's like dog, cow, this, that. At this point, he doesn't seem, we don't know, but we know he's naming the different animals, their species. But we don't know if he's like going, okay, cow. Oh, but that cow's going to be Bessie. Ooh, dog. Okay, Fido. Like, we don't have that picture. But right now, all he is calling Eve is woman. So from me. Now, why am I making this point? Okay, here is why I am making this point. God said, hey, he needs a helper. Why? Why would Adam need a helper? He's got God. He's got the fellowship of God, and he's been given a purpose and a mission. to take care of the garden and to name all these animals. Well, here's the thing. This is before the fall of man, and this is what I find very interesting. Adam is on a mission. He is carrying out the job that God has for him, and he is naming things. And then he gets this woman, and he's like, ooh, woman, from me, from me, from me. Yep, she's from me. Now, at this point, there is no sin. And then we see her, woman, talking with the serpent. Now, I have heard commentary that says she shouldn't have been talking to the serpent. You know, this is a mistake. No, there's no sin yet. There's no mistakes. This, again, I have not gone to seminary, so I am not a theologian. But the picture I see here is the man is very missional. Okay, he's very purpose-driven. He is going towards a mission. Okay, yes, he has a relationship with God, but it's like, okay, God gave me this job. I am doing this job. I am going forward. I am cultivating in the garden, and I am doing this. Now, here's woman. Okay, and this is just, to me, is the nature of woman. Woman is more relational. Okay, man mission-driven, woman relational. So why is Adam needing help? Well, maybe he needs someone to be the relational aspect, right? So he is on a mission, naming animals, doing stuff in the garden that God has laid out for him to do. And the reason I think that this could be it is because the woman's talking to the serpent. And yes, she gets deceived by the serpent, but when she takes the fruit, it says, so she took some of its fruit and ate it. This is in chapter 3, and this is in verse 6. She took some of its fruit and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Okay, I have also heard commentary that said, oh no, he wasn't like with her, like next to her. This is just a general with her that he's in the garden, because there is no way, and this was a man saying it, and that's fine. He can have his opinion, just being a woman and observing man. I think I have a slightly different opinion. This could be totally wrong, but he's saying there's no way a man would be right there and his wife is having a conversation right next to him and she is being misled and he's not, like, he wouldn't break in, like that doesn't happen. And I want to go, well, hold up, because like my spouse is very mission driven, and when he has a job, he is just focused on that job. And it sometimes takes me, being the relational person, to say, hey, it's important that you kind of stop working right now and maybe have a conversation with our child about XYZ. Or, hey, I really need you right now because I'm going through this, right? Because I'm relational. I see that. I'm talking to other people around. There have been times when, my husband is so set on what he needs to get done at work that he doesn't realize that the spouse from somebody at work is going through a really hard time. And they're like, I don't know why. He's like, I don't know why this person is distracted, why they're not getting this done or that done. I'm like, well, didn't he tell you, like, their kid's sick or this is going on or that's going on? Oh, well, he may have said something about that, and I'm like, no, big deal, okay? They may have said, oh, so-and-so's sick, but they're not telling you, like, they're really sick. They're in the hospital. He's pulling double duty or something like that, because he's so focused on the mission. And my husband is a very relational person. Like, he cares about people deeply. He just sometimes forgets to slow down and really listen. So Adam had this job laid out by God. And then Eve's going around and talking to the animals. Like, this makes sense to me. So he is so intent on the job that God has laid out for him, because I can tell you, I am trying to tell my spouse sometimes, like, a very important thing. But the work phone dings and there's an email, and it doesn't even, like, Sometimes it's something that has to be answered right then, but sometimes it's just, oh, this is on my mind, so don't forget it. I'm just going to reply, and completely blocks out what I'm saying. Now, the question is this a sin? Well, in our fallen world, sometimes, yeah, it can be. But sometimes it's just the nature of how God made man. So when men are focused on their mission, on what's happening, on their job, and they're so focused on that, the whole reason Adam needed a helper, at least it seems like to me, is to be the relational person, to do the emotional care. Okay? That doesn't make it, this is before the fall, right? Adam's right there. He's with her. He's with her. And yet he is somehow not cluing in to this conversation that the snake is having, because Adam had the direct information from God of what to do and what not to do. And here's what's really tricky. And I'm doing a Bible study right now. It's called No Other Gods by Kelly Minter. If you get a chance, I highly suggest it. But one of the things, because I'm like, oh, the snake lied, he only gave half truths or whatever. But then I was reading this study, and one of the things that she points out is which statement that the serpent makes is false. Which one's false? Well, it's not, he says, no, you will not die. Well, when God said you will die, he meant a spiritual death, like we would be separated through sin. And the snake says, no, you won't die. Well, he's talking about a physical death. Well, yeah, she eats the fruit and she doesn't die. Spiritually, yeah, there's a huge rift, and it takes thousands of years for God to carry out his plan. But in the moment when they eat the fruit, they don't die physically. So what the serpent says isn't false. It's twisted. It's completely twisted from God's meaning. And that's the thing we have to be careful of with Satan, especially as women being relational. We want acceptance, we want relationship, and we want to see these good things and these happy emotional feelings. And so it's like, oh, I won't die? Great. Well, that's not a false statement, but it is causing a spiritual death, a separation from God. And we have to be so careful because we are so relational. We have to be in the Bible and know the truth and not let Satan or culture or people around us twist that, or the whole, oh, well, it was a different time. No, I am telling you, like, Jerry Springer would have had a heyday. And yes, I'm aging myself with that comment, but Jerry Springer would have had a heyday if he was around during Bible times. I mean, the stuff that goes on is just, whoa. So it's a different time, but there is nothing new. There is nothing new under the sun. It is the same sins over and over and over and over again. But before the fruit is eaten, not sin, man has not named his wife other than woman, from me, which seems, hey, from me, that's the woman, she's from me. That might seem pretty self-centered, but he did exactly what he was supposed to do, which was name what she was, woman. He's done that with all the other animals. And the other thing is, I truly think guys get so purpose-driven and zeroed in on a task. It's one of the reasons why God brought woman to man, is to balance that, because there needs to be a focus and a purpose, and work is good. Like this is a time when there's no weeds, there's no sin, animals aren't killing each other, there's no prey and predator. Like those relationships don't exist. It's just wonderful, no sin, and yet God gives man a job. So man needs purposeful work, and woman, because we are from men. We need that too. And so that is not the sin. Okay? The sin is not, I haven't named her. The sin is not that. The sin isn't talking to the serpent. The sin is believing the serpent over God. That's the sin, and making the choice that God told us not to. Something else that, again, Kelly Mentor, I highly suggest her. But it is, you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Okay, so up to this point, man and woman do not know good and evil. They only know good. It's good. It's 100% good all the way around. Some of you all may have heard the story about the Secret Service. Before the Secret Service was put under Homeland Security, it was in the Treasury. And their job, besides protecting the president or politicians, the main job of the Secret Service, what a majority of them did before it went under Homeland Security, was they worked in like financial crimes, specifically focusing in on counterfeit and preventing counterfeiting of our monetary system, America's monetary system. And so the Secret Service would have to train a long time on so many bills. They had to train to know the true, real money. Well, it wasn't like they trained and were like, here's real money, here's counterfeit money. Do you see the difference? They trained 100% on the true, on the real, on the authentic, the absolutely authentic bills. 100% authentic. And then when they're out there and they are encountering the counterfeit, they know it. They know it right away because they know so well what is authentic that they immediately understand and know fraud, right? So at this point, Adam and Eve have been exposed to nothing evil, nothing bad, no lies, right? That's not something they've been exposed to. They don't know evil at all. And one of the things that Kelly Mentor points out is, look at this. They eat, right? And then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings from themselves, and then they hid from God, all right? They knew they were naked at this point. Being naked together, not a sin. Husband and wife, not a sin to be together. Where the sin comes in is now they have knowledge that the body can be, it can be fleshly, it can be sinful, it can have these shameful desires for each other that God didn't intend, right? Yes, naked, husband, wife, great. That is not a problem. But when we objectify each other and look at it as purely sexual without the love and without the relationship that God intended with it, when we lose that focus, that's when it's shameful. And that's what they're suddenly aware of, right? They're suddenly aware that nakedness can have shame and have negative feelings and have impure sexuality associated with it. So one of the points that Kelly Mentor makes is we were not designed to know evil. And I'd never really thought about that. It was like, okay, now they know good and evil, and the problem is that they sinned, right? That's the big sin. They decided to disobey God. But there is so much of me that wants to know as much as I can, that wants to gather knowledge, that I sometimes forget. Why does my soul get weighed down when I have information overload from media? Not the Bible, right? Have you ever noticed, like, when you just turn off the radio, turn off the TV, and focus in on the Bible, my spirit kind of lifts. Yet when I have other things going on and getting input, and they're not like the pure, good, wholesome messages, I start to feel kind of weighed down or anxious. And sometimes I don't even know. I'm like, why would I feel anxious? It's just a TV show. It's supposed to be comedy. And yet the world's comedy is often not in line with what God wants, right? And maybe it's not comedy, maybe it's a drama, maybe it's this, maybe it's just the news. Because think about how much, the news sensationalizes things, and even things that innately may not be evil, they have to make it like this huge deal. Oh my gosh, this is happening, that's happening, da 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 da. And especially as women, we are very emotional because we're relational. That's how we were designed to be. Like my soul starts to sink and I start to feel anxiety, and I'm like, what is going on? And it's because I am getting exposed to evil that I was probably never meant. We were never meant to be exposed to evil. We weren't supposed to have knowledge of good and evil. Now that we have it, we need to turn to the good. We need to look to the good. We need to be in our Bible so that we know the authentic truth, like Secret Service agents know the authentic bill. But we were not meant to know evil. We weren't meant for it. God knew it was going to happen, but that wasn't what he designed us for. And so we're going to get into this first woman more, but she's the original housewife. She is brought in specifically for Adam. And there's this sin and there's this curse as the result. And often that's what we focus on. That's what we're caused to focus on is, oh, look, woman came and she sinned and she caused the downfall of all man. Yep. So true. And yet, I do want us to see this. I will get more into her, but it says, God's giving her the curse. Chapter 3, verse 16 is where it starts. But it says, where is it? Okay, when he's talking to the serpent before he's giving Eve her curse, right? He says, you're going to be more cursed than any livestock. You're going to move on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life. And it says, I will put hostility between you and the woman. Yeah, I don't much like snakes. Some people that I knew back when I lived in California, there were lots of snakes, and people were like, nope ropes. I'll call them the nope rope. But it says, I will put hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. Pay attention. Here's the first prophecy. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. Okay? This is God saying, he's going to strike your head. He's going to crush your head. You're going to strike him in the heel, but he is going to crush you. This is the picture of, okay, there's going to be hostility between you and woman, but I am going to, through the woman, bring about offspring that will save the world and will crush this curse that you brought by convincing the woman to do this, right? So this is that first picture. He's going to use woman and her role in what's going to be her role from here on out to redeem things. And so, but the main thing I want us to have today is that man and woman designed for each other. Woman, I think, totally brought for a purpose, because man, and this is, people will be like, oh, that's toxic manhood. Look at how they're just going and trying to do the job. That is not toxic manhood. That is exactly how God designed man to be focused on a mission. And he brought him Eve so that Eve could do, she's not called Eve yet. Brought him woman to be the relational piece. It takes both, okay? It is, and that's why, God says, it is not good for man to be alone. And it's why a man is supposed to leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. This is the start of a new family, a new relationship. You have to put each other as the first most important thing. You as the relational, him as the missional. It takes a balance. You've got to have the emotional and the feeling and the relational, as well as the logical, going forth with a mission and a job. It is so important, and it is not toxic. So if somebody says, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they didn't listen, that's toxic." No, you just have to like get their attention and say, "This is important. I need you to clue in." And it is just so important that you have both pieces. Both pieces are important. And it says man and woman, he created them in his image. And so it's kind of the twofold. It takes both man and woman to give this in the marriage, to give this picture of God. And so I'll get more into the curse later, and we'll talk about more about that sin and immediately what follows, what that first sin is. But I just wanted this picture to say, hey, this is completely how God created us, and knowing evil is completely how God did not create us. And so I just deep dive, Wives of the Bible, starting out with first woman. And so yeah, so I hope this starts off a good study for those of you that said you wanted me to do this, even though we are thousands and thousands of miles apart. All right, so I hope and I pray that this touches you in some way, and yeah, so thanks for watching. All right.